So thank you for joining us here on Pro Talks. It's brief conversations with industry leaders exploring moments that shaped their careers and industries. This podcast is sponsored by the PR Office. I'm Ben Judah, and today I'm joined by Hillel Fuld. Hillel, thanks for joining us. I'm not quite sure how to define exactly what it is that you do and what you would say that it is that you do. For all those people who ask the same question as me, can you enlighten us?
Why do you think that I know what I do? So I wear a lot of different hats. I guess we all do nowadays. I'm a tech blogger. That's how it all started. Journalist, columnist. So I write for a lot of different publications covering Israeli tech and innovation in general. I also have a daily video blog, or I did pre-corona. Hopefully we'll get back to that soon. In addition to that, I work with many global brands as what I guess they call, for lack of a better term, influencer, ambassador, whatever. So I work with Google and Huawei, Oracle, Microsoft, and a few others. They all call it different things, key opinion leaders and whatever, but it's all the same stuff. And my main kind of bread and butter is that I work with startups and help them grow. In Israel, obviously Israel is known as a technology superpower, but we definitely have a challenge when it comes to marketing. And so I have a nice portfolio of companies that I advise, anything from social media to content, to biz dev, fundraising, PR, growth. And that's pretty much what I do. I'm a father, husband, father of 5. Yeah.
So I've just got one, and I can't fathom how people look after more than one child simultaneously. It's amazing. I think one of the kind of terms that you use on your website is that you make startups go boom. That kind of big impact, that big growth. What's some of the first questions that you ask startups in that first meeting?
So first of all, I hope that I've changed that copy on my website, because I was highly uncomfortable with that when the agency that built my website did that. I think it's transforming startups into businesses. But the first thing really that I talk to entrepreneurs about is I check if they did their research. That's a really big indication of their chances of success. Do they know their competitors? How do they even define a competitor? Are they looking at companies that aren't necessarily doing the same thing as them, but they're targeting the same target audience as them? I think that an entrepreneur that skips that part, the research part, to me, that's a huge red flag. So that's kind of the first thing that I talk to entrepreneurs about, and make sure that they've done their research and they know what they're up against, and they know, what the journey they're about to embark on and how difficult it is.
It's a really good starting point. I think one of the things that we do when we're talking to companies and doing that sort of competitor analysis piece is seeing who they compare themselves to and who they see shares that same thought space. And I'd say almost 9 times out of 10, it's just a pen and paper is a competitor to them. So they're trying to take that sort of share of action, that share of mind. I think one of the warning signs that I've certainly seen is people who say, I have no competitors. There's no one that does what I do. That to me is often, no one's doing it, then maybe there's a reason, or if no one's doing it, then you probably haven't looked, because there's always going to be someone who's had this idea, just executing it maybe in a slightly different way.
When someone says they have no competitors, to me, there's only 2 options. They didn't do their research, or there's no market. That's it.
And I guess one of the amazing things about Israel is everyone has they've got what they do, and then they've got at least one other side project, side part hustle, or a startup that they're also working on. Everyone from the guy who's making coffee to I once sat in an interview, and then midway through the interview, the guy said to me, "Look, you're not right for this job, but I do have a startup, and I think you might." What is it about the DNA? What is it in Israel that do you think that kind of engenders that thought?
I mean, there's obviously books written on this topic. It's an amazing thing. We're talking about a country smaller than New Jersey, in the most unstable region on planet Earth. And Israel pretty much, I'm not going to say they lead, but Israel is a dominant player in every sector of technology pretty much. Whether they're number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in the world, it's irrelevant because, again, it's a tiny little country with all the challenges you can possibly imagine. But, there are a lot of contributing factors. For sure, the military, because it's a very innovative body, and, you learn a lot about innovation and technology in the military. It's also government support. The Innovation Authority, funds startups. It's definitely a cultural thing. I like to joke that, in most places in the world, you want to switch lanes if you're driving. You put on your blinker, the driver in the next lane slows down to let you in. In Israel, they speed up. Right? Because in Israel, the mentality is, what am I, a friar? What am I, a sucker? Why would I let you into my lane? Well, that's not very good when it comes to doing business and marketing. You need to let people into your lane. You need to be subtle. You need to build relationships. But when it comes to technology, it's a very good thing because, they don't let people into their lane, and you tell an Israeli entrepreneur something's impossible and they're going to spend their life trying to prove you wrong. And so there really are a lot of contributing factors, but it really is truly remarkable what's going on in Israel now in terms of technology.
And I think traditionally it's been kind of the tech space in Israel has been pretty hot. It's been lots of innovation, software, things like that. But actually, if you look at where some of the innovations are coming out of now, you're looking at transportation, you're looking at agriculture, food,
Healthcare,
absolutely. My God, look at Zebra Medical and places like companies like that are just taking over the world. It's really amazing. Is there anything you think are really right now about to kind of turn out from some of the fringes into the mainstream?
drones. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I think I often say that if you want to know how far we've come technologically, drones are the perfect illustration of that. And you're talking about a device this big, 20 sensors on it, obstacle avoidance in all directions, can fly 9 kilometers and record in 4K. Or I have a drone that records in 8K. I mean, it's crazy technology. And I've seen some unbelievable companies in Israel in the drone space. And I don't think Israel's traditionally known as a leader in the drone space, but I think we're about to surprise a lot of people.
I've never thought of that. Never thought of that space. That's awesome. So I want to get back to you. You advise a ton of startups from having known about the sort of work that you do, having seen your vlog when it was on. You meet some incredible people. I'm sure that you didn't just wake up one morning and start saying, I want to meet the head of this amazing, impressive company or these really cool startups. How do you get to that point? Was it something that you always wanted to do, or is it something that kind of you discovered a passion for along the way?
Well, I started my career as a technical writer at a company called Converse. So I'm writing user guides for like SMS systems. You don't find a much more boring job than that. And so I'm sitting at my desk one day and I decide, I have thoughts about technology. I'm just going to write them. Not, as an authority. I didn't have a startup. I never did anything. I just liked technology and started writing. I didn't even call it a blog because people weren't blogging back then. But if you had asked me what my strategy or what my dream was, I had no business model, but I did have kind of a dream to meet, the movers and shakers of the technology world, the people who built, this tech world, people like Steve Wozniak, Mark Andreessen, crazy people. Now, I didn't know how I was ever going to get to them, but that was a dream of mine. What I learned was that interviewing people is a very powerful tool, like you're doing right now, because most people are happy to be on stage. And again, all I did was reach out to Steve Wozniak, the founder of Apple, or Mark Andreessen, who invented the web browser and is now the top VC in the world, and said, listen, my name is Hillel. I'd love to pick your brain. And I found that 9 out of 10 people said yes. Much more like, it was pretty like 10 out of 10 people said yes. And so I've interviewed some incredible people over the years, and it was kind of a plan and strategy of mine. And I've had some crazy stories happen. Steve Wozniak came to Israel for 24 hours. We had breakfast in his hotel in the lobby, and then we had an incoming rocket from Gaza. I had to rush him to a bomb shelter. Like really crazy stuff.
That's amazing, and an incredible hit rate. 9 out of 10 is an amazing hit rate. Well, you look at some of the stuff that Gary Vaynerchuk would say about you reach out and 99 times out of 100 someone's going to say no, but then that one time someone says yes, so you have to do multiple. What do you think is the lends you towards the success of a 9 time out of 10?
So I don't agree with Gary at all. Gary's a friend of mine. He's amazing. I could tell you amazing Gary stories, but I don't agree with him at all. I think you reach out to someone, generally speaking, people are happy to be interviewed. You make it easy to make it easy for them, send them questions by email or phone, whatever it may be. But, everyone has a mom. They want to send their mom the interview and say, look, mom, I was interviewed. Everyone. So I don't know why Gary says that. I mean, maybe he's talking about selling something, but I'm just talking about, asking them questions and giving them a stage. It's very different. I'm not saying that if you try to sell something to someone, 9 out of 10 people will buy it. I'm saying if you want to interview people, you want to spotlight people, you want to give them a stage, people are happy to be on stage.
Yeah, I think for me, doing this podcast, having this this is a forum, the majority of people that I've asked, I wouldn't say 9 out of 10, but the majority of people that I've asked have seemed quite willing to come and spend 20 minutes, half an hour just chatting about themselves. I tend to think as long as you're not asking with a hidden agenda, trying to get something out of them, it tends to be well received.
Yep. No reason not to.
And so you also, you've written some amazing content. You've got your own blog. You're published on a ton of outlets. You frequently publish on Inc. Firstly, I mean, how do you come up with the volume of ideas? And secondly, is that sort of consistency? It must have some discipline and some thought process that goes behind it. So I'd love to hear your process for doing that.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, I'm a big believer in consistency. You see on social, I take the same pictures. I said, the same date nights, the same signing off for 25 hours. I'm very, very consistent. One might say even OCD. But as far as how I come up with the content, I don't have an answer for that. There's, a lot to be said about how to build a startup. And so I write about that. I think, I probably have 5 more years of content before I run out. So that's that. But in terms of the process, let's say, for example, my weekly J-Post column, right? So I write about impact technology for the Jerusalem Post. Sunday morning, I research, I look for a company. I might reach out to a VC or to a PR company and say, hey, you have any great companies for me? Here are the criteria. They send them the information. I start doing my research on the company, write the article, send to the company usually for approval, just to make sure that I don't have any inaccuracies, asking for a high-res image, and then I'm submitting it to the J-Post by Monday, Tuesday, even though I have till Thursday, but I want to get that out of the way. Inc, again, I try to do it in the beginning of the week. Now I've kind of pivoted a little bit from startup content to interviews on Inc, but that means I have to wait. I'm dependent on people sending their answers. So I am waiting right now for at least four or 5 different people to send me their answers, including Omri Caspi, the NBA, ex-NBA player, and a couple of other really cool people. So yeah, I mean, listen, I'm not going to tell you that it's very hard work. It's, I like writing, I write fast and I enjoy it, but it definitely requires discipline. No question about it. I get to it. I sit down Sunday morning and I'm like just pumping out the content. And
I think a lot of people would love to be in the position that you're in, writing for these awesome publications. But as you said, it doesn't start that way. You started writing on your own blog. How does one make that jump? How did you make that jump to writing from your own blog to writing for other people's publications?
I feel like I feel like your viewers are going to think I'm oversimplifying here, but I'm really not. You have to understand, Inc. is a publication that needs content. I am a person that needs distribution. They have millions of readers. I write a piece, I submit it to an editor, they like it, boom, they're a contributor. That's it, really. They didn't ask me how many followers I have. I wrote a piece of content, I submitted it to an editor, they liked it, they said, all right, let's do this. That was really it. I mean, I think in Inc's case, they actually reached out to me, but, with J-Post, it was just, what do you want to write about? It's, we want content, you want distribution, it's win-win. People are happy to do this.
I think from someone who's kind of seen the number of publications that you've contributed to, I think it comes from you write anyway. You're not writing specifically, and you're specifically not writing with an agenda. Again, you're writing for yourself to get you have a piece of content that you want to get out there because it needs to be written, and you're going to write it. And whether you're going to publish that on your own blog or you're going to publish that on Inc or J-Post, you're going to publish it somewhere.
Right.
And having that glut of content, having that reliability of, going to write it anyway, I think makes you an attractive person for them to feature as a contributor.
Yeah, I mean, listen, again, it's a classic win-win. They're happy to get, and like me, there are, I don't know, hundreds of contributors. We have a Slack channel. I see how many people are writing for Inc. They're getting tons of content for free. They're not paying me, and I'm not obviously promoting any of my startups. That's a big no-no. But yeah, I mean, I don't know who gains more, me or them. I guess the downside of all of this is that people see on my LinkedIn or on my Facebook that I write for TechCrunch and the Next Web and VentureBeat, they just assume that like I'm a journalist there, that like I work for TechCrunch. And so today, for example, someone pitched me an article for a publication that I'm a contributor at, and I'm like, please go find me. Like, I want you to show me an article that I wrote for TechCrunch about a specific startup, because you're pitching on a startup for TechCrunch. Did you do your research? Because I don't write for TechCrunch about startups. I wrote a piece for TechCrunch about venture capital. But like, people don't do their research. They just see that, oh, you write for TechCrunch, they start pitching you, which is a pretty bad indication of, how serious you are if you can't do a little research. But yeah, I enjoy it. I'm having a good time. It's fun to write for these great publications. And like I said, I get massive distribution, helps me, helps them. Everyone wins.
That's really great. And I think, again, you bring it back to doing research. I obviously, at the beginning of this podcast, didn't necessarily do my research and relied on what I'd seen and remembered on your website and at the beginning of your videos. But absolutely, research, I think you're right. It's key, especially when we at the PR office are pitching people. We don't do these big 300-person journalist lists because you're somewhere in a database that once wrote about a startup. I'm going to pitch you on everything under the sun. It's all about coming back to, what's this person writing about now? Have they written in the last 3 months? Because very often, it's an old list and someone's not doing the full work, not doing the full prep work.
Right.
I'd love to hear from you if you can think of any interesting moments for you that were pivotal in getting you to the point that you're at the moment, whether that was a meeting or an introduction, a speech that you gave, or how it is that you think that your career trajectory has come to this point.
I mean, there were many. There were many. So after I was a technical writer, I then worked in the finance sector a little bit, but then I joined my first startup. It was in the mobile advertising space, and I kind of pitched the CEO to open a company blog and let me start writing about the industry, to establish us as an authority in the industry, which was a very new concept back then. And he went for it, and so I did that. And then startups started to reach out to me, and I started to meet them and help them. I wasn't taking money. And it turns out that was the best decision I ever made, because when everyone around me was selling something, I was just offering my help. And what I was doing, now I know in retrospect, I was establishing trust. And trust is the biggest asset in business, that I think is the most underrated asset. And so a lot of these companies came back to me sometimes a decade later and said, listen, you helped us early on. We know what you did for us. We know your capabilities. We want them. What are your terms? And I had no idea what to answer to that question, but slowly but surely I built myself a portfolio. So I'd say one pivotal moment was kind of deciding to meet entrepreneurs and help them for free. Definitely, obviously, meeting Steve Wozniak was like a mind-blowing morning. It was the craziest, most surreal morning of my life. But, on Twitter on a regular basis, I interact with the craziest people. I mean, I grew up on watching Who's the Boss, Alyssa Milano, and we're buddies. Like, we're DMing, we're like friends. I mean, Ellen DeGeneres follows me on Twitter. It's crazy. Like, I mean, really, really wild stuff have happened to me over the years. I've had tweets that went completely insanely viral. Like, I remember in one of the conflicts in Israel, I was on the highway and there was an incoming rocket and all the cars were standing sideways and everyone was crouched over, and it was a very surreal scene. So I took a picture of it and I tweeted it, and it went crazy. Like, every publication used the picture, and it went like, it must have gotten easily 50 million views, like easily. It went nuts. I mean, it's hard to quantify, right? Because I can only see how many impressions it gets on Twitter, but people use the image in Mashable and all these other places. So that was another pivotal moment. But yeah, I mean, there's so many, but I think generally speaking, kind of establishing my business model, let's call it, of just trying to be nice and help people and not expecting anything. It turns out when you help others win, you end up winning. And that's what I learned over the years, which is, when you focus on value in any form, whatever that means, and you're not being compensated for that value, there are no expectations, right? You're not paying me, so you expect nothing. If you're expecting nothing, all I can do is exceed expectations. When I exceed expectations over and over and over again, I create what I like to call delight, and delight can be monetized, turns out. So that, that choosing that kind of path was, I think, the most pivotal moment for me.
I've never heard it put quite that eloquently. That's succinctly. Is it something that you kind of stumbled upon, or is it something that was quite deliberate?
I was stumbled upon. I had total imposter syndrome in the early years. I was like, I'm meeting these entrepreneurs. I'd never built a company in my life. Who am I to ask for money? So I'm having lunch with them, and they're pitching me their product, and I'm like, that's the worst pitch I ever heard. And they're like, I say, who are your competitors? And they say, we have none. I'm like, you're a fool. And I was just helping these guys. I didn't think to ask for money. It wasn't, I had a job, but it turned out, like I said, I was establishing trust, building my brand, and helping people. And, afterwards, I did read a lot of literature about this kind of concept, whether it's Adam Grant's book, Give and Take, or Ryan Holiday's strategy, the canvas strategy, which is brilliant. And these things, they all describe that when you build a canvas for other people to create masterpieces on, you end up winning. You pave the road for others to go on their way to success. You end up going down that road. So I didn't make it up, but I wasn't familiar with it when I started it.
And so what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to other people who are, thinking, this sounds amazing. A guy who's, advising startups on marketing and working with some of these awesome brands, big companies. What would be some advice for people maybe slightly earlier on in their careers?
You mean an entrepreneur?
An entrepreneur, yeah.
I would say before you spend a dime building your product, I would spend a month at least building a comprehensive landscape of your entire space. Literally anybody. I spoke to a company today in the mental health space, and I asked them who their competitors are. They start to name startups, and I said, you realize every therapist out there is your competitor. This is the way people do things. Till now, you're changing people's behavior. And so, you really have to know your market, backwards and forwards. That's the first thing I do. And I would say, don't go and run and raise money because you hear about these monster rounds, financing. Build a minimal viable product, get it in the hands of 10, 20 users, measure the data, analyze the data, pick up the phone, call your 20 customers, ask them how they like the product, iterate, get it in front of 50 people, 100 people. And really, try to push off raising capital. That's what I say, bootstrap as long as you can. Because when you come to an investor with traction, critical mass, then you define the terms of the investment. Whereas in the early stages, if you're raising capital on an idea, you're going to get killed on the terms and you're going to give away your company. So I understand that you need oxygen to build a company. I get that. So go friends and family maybe, but try not to raise capital for as long as you can hold off. That's what I would say.
Awesome. And finally, is there anything that you would have wanted to tell yourself maybe 10, 15 years ago?
Learn how to code. Seriously, I wish I knew how to code. I don't know that I have the brain for it, but yeah, it's definitely something that I wish I knew how to do. But I would say just instead of wasting the years that I wasted being a technical writer and doing the other stuff in the finance sector, I would have jumped right into this model because it's a successful model. And yeah, that's, I would tell myself to have accepted the job offer that I got from Waze. I got a job offer from quite a few startups that ended up exiting for a lot of money that I said no to. But I'm just joking. I don't have any regrets about that. But yeah, I would have said start this model earlier.
One thing I'd say, learning to code, I'm trying to do it at the moment. Really, my brain does not work that way. There is an app called Grasshopper on Android, though, which is written by Google, which is actually really good. So if you want to sort of start scratching that itch, it's a good footstep in, I think.
All right, check it out.
So if people were to want to, follow you, learn a little bit more, where could they find you?
I mean, Google is your friend. I'm everywhere basically. On Twitter, I'm Hillel Fuld. That's Hilz. There you go. It's for you. Fuld. Hillel Fuld everywhere. I don't know. You just Google me. It's pretty easy to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you taking the time today.
Absolutely.
Look forward to catching up. Hopefully next time when I'm in Israel, when I can fly out.
Or I'll come to you.
Amazing.
All right. Looking forward. Take care.